Very good morning. My name is Chris. I have the privilege of being your curate, and I very well know that good things come in small packages. And I say I know that. Kathy's laughing. She's 6'2". Children are also precious and small. I'm 5'5". I should know. If anyone knows, good things come in small packages. I should know. Can anyone think of any other examples? Good things, small packages. Diamonds. What was that? Cadbury's Dairy Milk. Okay, yeah, I like it. What was that at the back? No? Okay. Roses. Yeah. Beautiful, small. Baby Jesus. Yeah. Like it, Carol. Very apt for the coming Advent. Yeah. Small things can be not just precious, but also very impactful. If we have something that's small, that can also have a big impact over someone else or the world around us, that means we've got a lot of responsibility to use whatever it is we've got with extreme care. That's what James is getting at in our passage. James has spotted something in the Christians that he's writing to. He's spotted something small that has a big effect, and that thing is the tongue. The Christians that James is writing to aren't making faces at each other. They're not sticking out their tongues kind of getting upset at each other. James is concerned with the words that they're using. Now, tongues are fascinating things, aren't they? Tongues are the only muscle that's connected on one end. Do you know that? We can taste all sorts of complex flavors with our taste buds: sweet, sour, salty, bitter. We can move food around our mouths so it can be chewed properly before swallowing. Have you ever tried eating something without using your tongue? It's very tricky. Whether it's licking, whistling, breathing, eating, our tongues are super important. Most importantly for James and for most humans in the world, our tongues help us speak. Without a tongue, you can't speak, can you? With a tongue, you can wield great, but also very terrible power. Words have the ability to change the course of nations. Words can contribute to the eternal destination of someone's soul if they hear and respond to the life-giving good news about God's kingdom and salvation through Jesus. Or words can get us into very hot water. If we say the wrong thing at the wrong time to the wrong person, we might get fired, dumped, or slapped. Won't tell you which one of those three I've had. No. Words can be devastating, can't they? Words can be like torture to other people. Words can end lives, start wars, rip families, countries apart. James is challenging us to think extremely carefully about how we use our words. It's hard, isn't it? Because we talk so much. How are we meant to kind of weigh and measure everything we say? We talk so much. Firstly, James warns us of the high bar of leadership. Slightly ironic, because I'm standing here teaching, and James has a warning for those who want to teach. Not many of you should want to become teachers, not because you're rubbish, but because you will be judged more strictly. Not many of you should want to become teachers because you will be judged more strictly. I'm well aware of this. I'm sure Kathy, Martin, we have other teachers in this place, not just who stand here, but who teach midweek, in homes, Sunday schools, all kinds of places. They're all teachers. If you want to be a teacher, then beware. You'll be judged more strictly by God. If you're in the position of teacher, that comes with responsibility for the people you are teaching. One day me, Every other teacher in God's church will have to answer for their leadership. My words in this pulpit matter because it's a place of responsibility. If you listen to something I happen to say, fantastic, but I better make sure that it leads you on the right path. Teachers need to be keeping account for their teaching and leading, they need to be kept to account, teachers need to be kept to account for their teaching and leading, not just on the last day, but here and now. And please be assured that Martin, as our vicar, has around him keen-eyed men and women of faith, deep faith. He has around him men and women of prayer, men and women of wisdom, and they advise him, they question him, they encourage him in the words he says, and the vision he shares. And this is good, and it's right. What about us more generally? We're not all Martin, and that's a good thing. We're all individuals, aren't we? We are all individuals. What about us more generally? Let's apply this to how we use our words with teachers and leaders. It's kind of easy to suggest things. I've been there and done it. It's easy to suggest things to kind of leaders and teachers. Can't we have nicer coffee at church? Guilty. 16-year-old me, what about some electric guitars? That'll get people in, won't it? Can we have less liturgy? It's quite boring. What about you? Can't the children be kept quiet like they were in my day? I'm not just saying that because sometimes my children are noisy, but I think that it's a bit Victorian that children should be seen and not heard. Why haven't we got more people in their 20s? What about the finances, the building, the mission, evangelism? You can keep going, can't you? Here's the thing. If you want to ask questions of the captain, you've got to be prepared to get on board. And I sincerely mean that as an encouragement, not necessarily a warning. If you want to ask questions of the captain, then you must be prepared to get on board. The church is a team or a family that requires we're all thinking, all praying about where God is using us, together and individually. If someone suggests, we should really be doing more discipleship, Chris, and they want to start a new life group, but aren't sure how to go about it, I can guarantee I will support them, I will support you with every fibre of my being. Please be kind and encouraging to our teachers, and if there's opinion you have, perhaps you need to be prepared to do something about it, if you're prepared to share it. Secondly, more broadly, James wants us to think carefully about the words we use, because he knows just how powerful our words are or can be. Our words are powerful. James uses some metaphors, doesn't he? Did you spot them? To help us think about the effects of words. He uses the metaphor of a horse in verse 3, a ship in verse 4, and in verse 5 and 6, fire. He uses kind of springs of water and vines, trees later on, but that's slightly different. Do you notice something about, horse, ship, and fire? They are all very powerful. All very powerful. Horses were essentially the engines of the day. If you wanted to get somewhere quick, you couldn't do it without a horse. Ships could move great loads over water much quicker than humans could by land or by cart. And fire, as James reminds us, has the power to burn down great forests. James's point is this: the effect our words can have is very powerful. How often have we heard on the news, in papers, social media, online, words that seem to be full of so much promise about our NHS, education, economy, whatever. But when they fail to deliver, they just lead us to more disillusionment with politics, our sports team, whatever it is. How often have we said something, perhaps we thought it was nothing, but it has deeply hurt someone? We end up thinking, I wish I could take that back. Perhaps we've had something said to us that just made us never want to speak to that person again. I'm sure I'm not the only one who knows families who, you say, oh, have you talked to your brother? They say, oh, I haven't spoken to him for 20 years because something happened at Christmas. Someone said something, that was it. Words can be devastating. And James's diagnosis goes even deeper still. He says that the tongue is a world of evil among the parts of the body. So often what we say is the culmination of how we feel, or maybe what we think, maybe a combination. What we say is a kind of culmination of how we feel or what we think. Luke 6 has it correct. Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. That can be a good thing because, as I regularly remind our children, we need to learn to talk about how we feel. Not just stamp our feet and shout. It can also leave a trail of destruction. What we say, whether out loud or in our hearts, is so often the beginning of sin. James goes a bit further into the pictures he's using. These powerful things, ship, horse, fire, can be controlled. They're powerful, but they can be controlled. A rider needs to control a horse. Can anyone remember what the bit? Oh, I just said it. If you want to control a horse, you need a bit. That's what it's called. The metal piece that goes in a horse's mouth to control which way it goes is called a bit, isn't it? It's quite small, but very effective. All a captain needs to control the direction of any ship, big or small, is a tiny rudder. All a pyromaniac, someone who's obsessed with fire, needs to burn down a forest is a spark from a small flint. James is helping us see that although our words are powerful, they can be controlled. What about us? How do we speak? How do we speak? There was a time that if you wanted to be heard, all you needed was a corner and a box. Then you had to have a scroll. Then you had to have a printing press. Now we can speak words not just out loud, but through all sorts of ways. Just think for a minute about the amount of different ways you can communicate words. Just think. Smartphones, smartwatches, computers, internet, billboards, magazines, TV, papers, Morse code, books, radio. Is that the same as Morse code? I think it technically is, isn't it? Post-it notes. The list goes on. You can even pay to have messages written in the sky with an aeroplane if you really wanted to. A lot of that innovation has led to lots of great things, of course, but it's also led to keyboard warriors, hackers, people who try and steal your money online. James's point is that something so small can cause a lot of damage. So we've got to think carefully about the way we use our words. There are lots of other things like that, aren't there? When you press your car to make it go, you press on a little square of metal and rubber. It's about that size. But you're moving a couple of tons of metal and plastic at potentially a very high speed. What about the trigger of a gun? Throughout James, we've seen that he wants our faith to match our actions to match our faith. That's a big theme through James. James hates double-mindedness. You can't say one thing and do another if you're a Christian. It must have an impact on the way you live your life. If you're going to talk the talk, you've got to walk. Or as I think they say in Yorkshire, you can't be all talk and no trouser. I think something like that. I don't quite know what that means, but it's a thing. I'm going to throw up some questions. And I'm asking these of myself too. Do we need to speak up? Or do we need to shut up? Maybe we need to speak up more. There might be two ways this needs to happen. I'm a sulker. If someone offers me criticism, Layla says, Chris, I've just noticed this in the way that you've done that. Boom, Martin might say as we meet for supervision, Chris, I've just, there was something in our sermon, da-da-da-da-da. Okay. And I don't say anything. And I'm very quick to if I'm not saying anything, it doesn't mean I'm sulking, but I can be very quiet very quickly. I was brought up with the notion that if you haven't got anything polite to say, don't say anything at all. And that can be good because it's a kind of guard against just blurting back out, isn't it? That's kind of what I think it's meant to do. But I think I personally have maybe taken that too far. Maybe you have. And actually it can be damaging not to express how you're feeling in a constructive way. It doesn't give us license to just blurt back and kind of retaliate. But if we just clam up, hold those things inside us, we can breed resentment, guilt, all kinds of things. Just because your ego might be bruised doesn't mean you can't express, communicate how you feel. What about injustice? Do we need to speak up for injustices we see? Maybe not just injustices, but for the voiceless, the marginalised. Being a school governor, talk to Malcolm about this. Malcolm was a governor for probably longer than I've been alive. Children do have voices, obviously, but not in they can't vote, they can't drive cars, they can't buy houses, they can't write to their MPs, whatever it is. Being a school governor gives you a voice for hundreds of children, and we're not all called to be school governors, but that may be something that God puts on your heart. Do we need to speak up, or do we need to shut up? Maybe you're a talker. Don't know. Keeping an eye on how quick we are to speak can help guard against butting others out of conversations. There's a couple of Proverbs, Proverbs 10, Proverbs 13. Sin is not ended by multiplying words, but the prudent hold their tongues. Or more positively, those who guard their lips preserve their lives, but those who speak rashly will come to ruin. Maybe we need to speak up. Maybe we need to shut up. Lastly, where are we and when are we tempted to say one thing and do another? We've already heard about James's disdain for double-mindedness. We might be very polite at church. Cup of tea, vicar? Oh, lovely dress. Wasn't the service nice this morning? Oh, look at your lovely children. Have you had a biscuit? How was your week? But then when we get home, go to work, I don't know how other people use language. I've heard all sorts of language in my workplaces in the past. Gossip, slander, speaking ill of the boss, that colleague that no one really likes or can't get on with. What are we trying to foster when we speak? James says that salty and fresh water can't flow from the same spring. Do we harbour resentment or wish people harm when they offend or hurt us? Or are we trying to adopt and grow a culture of speaking which means our words are full of praise for others and for God? I'd want to spend time with that kind of person. It's a much more attractive way to live. Thirdly, James isn't just giving good life advice. All of kind of what I've said, I could kind of say most of what I've said almost anywhere. But we're in church, we've got our Bibles, and there's someone very important we can always hold our lives up against. How does Jesus use his words? He has divine wisdom, and we saw that in verse 17 as well. If you want words that are wise, they will come from heaven, from God. Words that are pure, peaceful, considerate, submissive, merciful, like fruit, impartial, and sincere. Wow. Like if all my words were all those things, that'd be amazing, wouldn't it? Imagine spending a day with someone who spoke like that. When God speaks, go back to the beginning. God speaks the universe into creation, doesn't he? We don't know if it was a big booming voice. Doesn't really matter. God speaks. Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. At our life group on Wednesday night, we were thinking about when God speaks to Moses, wasn't it? And he says, I have spoken. And it's Moses who kind of says that. God uses other people as their mouthpiece, prophets, maybe through dreams, visions. Ultimately, God's word to us, his logos, that's the Greek for word, which is repeated through the beginning of John's Gospel. In the beginning was the Word, and the was with God, and he was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light to all mankind. That light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The word that God speaks wasn't and isn't distant and cold. It came down to be with us, full of light and life. The Word, thank you, became flesh, made his dwelling among us. We have seen, this is verse 14, sorry. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. God's word to us is Jesus. If we look at Jesus, we can see how God speaks, what his words are, what his plan and intention for humankind are, for me and for you. That plan is the plan of salvation. Salvation through the beautiful and frankly horrifying work of Jesus on the cross to bear sin for all. It's kind of impossible, but bear with me. Let's just try a little thought experiment. I want you to try and imagine, close your eyes if you like, the worst kind of thing you can think of. Maybe it's the Holocaust, gulags, something like that. Now imagine all of the worst things that everyone has ever done, pile them into one horrendous room. It would go on and on and on, wouldn't it? Not just the killing fields of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, but all the manipulation, exploitation of people on the planet, all the selfishness and greed we use to get our own way, the pride to feed our egos and subvert others, the lust, jealousy, all the words you and I have spoken that have been cursed, that have brought people down, reduced people to tears and pain and destruction. Put them in one big room. All of that room was poured onto the shoulders of Jesus and broke him to death. Jesus didn't stay dead though, did he? Jesus did not stay dead. Not even the sins of humankind, past, present, and future, could hold him down. Only God could bear the impact of all that horrendous sin, but only God could overcome it. Only God could conquer sin and death and be raised to life. Only a man could represent us before God as a redeeming sacrifice. So in Jesus we have God and man. Meeting those two requirements, we find Jesus. He is the saving plan, the saving logos from the beginning, for now until he comes again. Jesus is the overflow of God's love for the whole world, so that we can find joy, peace, forgiveness, freedom, starting here and now. Amen.